are processed directly in Passport. Got it.
Thanks, Ilki.
Just to, sorry, that caught me off guard when I saw it.
Sure.
But just to continue that thought, any contract items for DOE that are in the system, again, you would need an account and Passport for. And these include, for example, City Council discretionary award contracts, which I think is going to be a great transition to our next presentation here. But just as a point to leave off on, if any of you are interested or have applied for City Council discretionary awards, for example, those contracts are actually processed digitally in Passport for the most part, which means that you are required to have a Passport account as well as HHS pre-qualification for your awards to clear and move to the contracting process.
Great, thanks, Ilki.
Of course, and with that, I transition to City Council.
Yes, sounds good. So yep. Now we're gonna transition over to Jim, and if you guys have more questions, feel free to put it in the chat, and then we'll try to answer them as best as we can. So now we have City Council.
All right. I'm going to share my screen now.
Sure. And we are recording.
Yes.
That way we can share it with more people, those people that couldn't come.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Okay, thank you very much for that excellent presentation. And I'm glad that you went right before me so we can explain how this contracting process works a little further. For everyone here, my name is James Reyes. I am a unit head at the City Council of Finance. And specifically what I handle is all the members' discretionary funding, such as the application process, as well as the members making their designations, Schedule C creation and transparency resolutions, which are hearings where we make changes to the adopted budget. Okay, so first let's start off with what is discretionary funding? So discretionary funding is an appropriated sum of funds, a sum of money that was designated by the City Council, by one of its members or the council as a whole, and can only be designated to eligible non-for-profit organizations. Now, one thing to note about this is that this process and discretionary funding as a whole is a reimbursement-based program, which means that the organization, if you are designated or received an award from the City Council, the funds must be spent and receipts must be submitted to the agency during the contracting process in order to draw down on those funds. Unfortunately, unlike some other funding sources that may be private or outside of the city, you do not receive a check up front for this funding. So that's one thing to keep in mind before you apply or get yourself ready to even consider discretionary funding. Okay. Next, who is eligible for discretionary funding? So as I mentioned in the last slide, organizations that are eligible must be a non-for-profit organization. Okay. And in order to be considered eligible non-for-profit, the organization must hold their own, they must be incorporated and hold their own EIN number, as well as being registered with the New York State Attorney General's Charities Bureau, unless they are exempt. But even if they are exempt, they must submit a one-page document to the New York State Attorney General's office stating the reason why they're exempt, and that in theory would be uploaded onto their website. Some exemptions that I know of or that I've been familiar with are religious organizations. They are exempt and they are eligible for funding. And some schools like charter schools and whatnot are usually exempt. Who cannot apply for discretionary funding? For-profit entities are not eligible under any circumstance. If at all, they may have been a subcontractor if you are part of an organization that is for-profit. But even that, we have strict rules on what we allow for subcontracting with our funding. So one thing to note is that all discretionary funding is held or capped off at a 30% subcontracting max. So any funds you receive from the city council, only 30% of that award or designation can be used for subcontracting. How to apply for discretionary funding? Unfortunately, the deadline has passed to apply, but just to get an idea of how to apply, the application is released once a year. It is released usually in the first week of January and is only available on the city council's website. The link is there, and as of right now, this link is disabled because the application is down, but we usually leave it up for approximately 6 weeks. This was the deadline. The release date was on January 3rd, and the deadline to submit was on February 22nd. Okay. When you go to the website, we had the link to the application, as well as the application isn't something that you have to sit and complete in one sitting. When you fill out an application, you're asked to create an account. When you create that account, any applications you begin will be automatically saved, as well as the submitted applications will be listed there as well. Okay. Next, some different types of expense funding or discretionary funding. Okay, so when you go to apply, there are the council has many different initiatives. The council members have their own pots of funding for their, specific council districts and whatnot. So I'll go through some of the different types of funding. So first we have member discretionary, and this is funding that is designated specifically from sources that are specific to the council district. If for those who may have received funding before, they may have received it through some of these pots. The pots or the initiatives that are related to specific council member districts are local youth, aging, and anti-poverty. Then next you have speaker funding. This funding is designated by the speaker, but to be honest, it's typically at the request or from the support of a council member or members, a delegation or caucus. Okay, so typically the speaker funding is not just the speaker's own pot of whatever he or she wants to fund. It's funded based off of support and basically information received from the council members on a district-wide level. Okay, then next you have member designated initiatives. So the city council has certain initiatives that we have given the members designating power over. So they all have specific amounts for specific initiatives, and they have full range on how to designate it. And those initiatives have specific guidelines and are equally split up amongst each of the council members. Some example of those initiatives are listed there: CASA, Green NYC, food pantries, etc. Okay, and then we have citywide initiatives. Those initiatives were created to address different needs across the city, and those aren't, basically the council members aren't given full designation rights to those initiatives. Those initiatives were created for specific reasons and are designated typically as a whole, as a body or by a committee that specializes in that, whatever initiative it is. And then lastly, we have the borough-wide initiative, in which all the borough delegations receive a specific amount of funds, and those funds are then broken up to address different needs within the borough. Okay, so those are some examples. I know I just went through a whole bunch, and to be honest with you, the city council has over 140 initiatives, all of which are listed in a document that's on our website titled Schedule C. Now, Schedule C is a document that's released whenever the city council adopts the budget for the fiscal year. And in that document is very important and helpful because it has a full write-up on every initiative that the city council has funded for the current fiscal year, as well as if we listed any recipients of that initiative at adoption. Sometimes we do, sometimes we make those designations after we adopt the budget. But in the event we did, those designations would be listed in there as well. So I just gave a brief summary of all the possible discretionary funding options that we offer. But for more details on each of them, you would have to locate Schedule C on our website. We do have one for every fiscal year. So if you're just curious about in the past what we funded, you can look that up as well. Okay, then lastly, what I kind of just want to touch base on, since Ilke briefly explained, the process and all the parties involved in the process. So I kind of want to connect some of the dots. The next slide that I have is actually just a written explanation of each one of these, but I'm going to go through each one quickly. Okay, so we're here in the sense that organizations just submitted the application to the city council. And then after that, they would then meet with, council members, because that's, how you in the end receive funding from the city council. It's one thing to apply to the city council, but after you apply, you then have to meet with whichever members you are seeking funding from. You have to understand that the council members receive a lot of applications. We received over 10,000 applications this year. Okay, and in FY22, we've made over, close to 10,000 designations. Not that we've funded 10,000 organizations, but just to get an understanding of the scale of applications and designations we're working with. So because of that, if you are seeking funding from a member, it is important that you, in addition to applying, that you actually reach out and try to meet with that member to explain your proposal. Okay. But next, as Ilke mentioned, in order to even be eligible for city council funding, or at the point of receiving city council funding when it's designated, you have to have, be registered with Mox Passport, as well as have an HHS accelerator account. Okay, that's important. I put this little asterisk here because the next step would be the council actually designating, awarding your organization funding. If that were to happen, and we were to list that publicly, unless you have your passport and HHS accelerator all taken care of, it will not be listed. It will not be listed on the cleared list. Now, the cleared list is something that Mox produces, and it goes with our funding. So once we adopt the budget, or as I mentioned, after sometimes we do designations in what's called the transparency resolution. Once we either adopt the budget and release Schedule C, or vote and approve a transparency resolution, the city council reviews all their funding. We have our own review process, and then that specifically entails like the Charities Bureau and the required forms to the application. So we review that, and we make sure that's up to date. We send those awards and clearance details to Mox. Mox takes a look at Passport in their system. They review that, make sure that you have all your information up to date within Passport and HHS Accelerator. Also, one thing I am failing to mention is the capacity training. In the event an organization is receiving 10,000 or more from the city council, they are required to complete a capacity training with Mox. That's offered virtually, and the organization can take that at any time. But that is a requirement that the city council has for any organization seeking or are receiving more than 10,000. Okay, so once Mox reviews what they have cleared and what we have cleared, they release what's called the cleared list to the city agencies, which basically gives the agencies a green light to contact you and begin the contracting process with your organization. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind, that you have to make sure that you have all the clearance items handled for both the council and the mayor's office of contract services before the agency can even reach out to you. We're getting a lot of calls that some organizations haven't heard from the agency yet, and they're getting concerned. But at the same time, they have to keep up with their Passport, logging into Passport, as well as making sure that they are up to date with their clearances. And they could do that both, on the Mox website as well as the City Council's website. Mock's website, I must admit, is has a lot more details in terms of clearance, status. And in addition to that, they have specific dates on when it was cleared listed on their website, which we do not. And sometimes that can be time consuming. Updating that would do it. So honestly, I recommend everyone go to the discretionary MOX tracker, which is on the MOX website. In there has one-stop shop for everything. It'll tell you if your awards, if you are receiving funding, it'll tell you that if your awards are clearing the council, or if they're pending council or MOX. And if they're pending council, they'll notify you that it is, and then you can reach out to us. Okay, once clear list is released, passport is then updated. And that's when everything is flowing through passport, as OK said. In the past, there was a lot of back and forth, paper exchange, emails, phone calls, updating contact information. With passport, that kind of does away with all that. We leave it up to the organization to log into their passport account and keep themselves up to date on passport activities with the agencies and MOX. So please, if you are new to this, or if you received funding before, please make sure that you are up to date and keep track of your awards within passport. If you are seeing something like you received funding, but it's not showing up in passport, that's another reason or flag that you should reach out to either MOX or the City Council's Finance Division to find out what's going on. And then we can, work it out internally to make sure or get you an answer as to why it's not, because it could be something small like Ilke mentioned, where DOE does certain things outside of passport. So you may see certain contracts in and certain things that are not in there. But just for clarity's sake, please reach out so that we can all be on the same page. And then next, organization submits their receipts and budget documents, because as I mentioned, this is a reimbursement-based process. Once they would submit all that, via passport and work with the agency to do so. Once everything is submitted, agency will review the contract package, and once they deem it's complete, they submit it to the comptroller for review. Please note that once it's submitted to the comptroller has 30 days to approve or deny the contract. It is rare that contracts get denied because the agencies are usually pretty thorough on the front end with asking for all the information. So if the agency is asking for a lot of information, they have a reason for it, and it's usually because they are going to need it before they submit that to the comptroller's office. Okay. So I know that was a lot, and the reason why I wanted to go through that is I need you to understand, if you are seeking this type of funding or currently receiving this funding, this is kind of a time-consuming process, but you can get out ahead of it if you have everything in order before you actually receive the funding. So a lot of delays are typically caused not so much on the back end or on the contract side. It's usually on the front end when an organization received funds but weren't cleared from the initial designation. Now, the council votes on transparency resolutions once a month. So what that means is that the council only shares updated data and clearance information with MOX once a month. So a clear list is only released approximately once a month. So if you miss that vote upon designation, meaning you weren't cleared, it's a possibility that you will delay your contract by at least a month while waiting for the next cleared list. And then that, so moral of the story here is just try and make sure that you are up to date with any of your applications or passport portal clearances and whatnot. Okay. And that is all I have. I did share this with Miguel and the DYCD team, so I'm sure they will make it available to you guys after this. Additionally, if you have questions relating to funding that you're currently receiving, you can reach out to our office at discretionary@council.nyc.gov. And again, I'll make this available to Miguel and the DYCD team after this as well. Okay, I do not doubt that I will have questions, but
you definitely have questions.
You have several, James.
I don't doubt it.
Go ahead, Val.
All right, but before we get to James' question, we have one
Yes.
last one for Ilke.
Okay.
And it comes from Kara. Ilke, I have an account from my organization through nyc.gov, but I went into Passport, the section, and it prompts me to create an account, and then it says my email is already used. How can I tell if I have an account?
Great question. So if you already have an email address that is linked to a NICE ID, just use that email address and your password to log into Passport. If you already have an account, or rather if your organization already has an account, it's going to log you directly into Passport. If your organization doesn't have an account, or if there's no organization linked to your NICE ID, then it's going to take you to the approval form to request an account for your organization.
Thank you, Ilke. James,
Sure.
you're up.
Sure.
Can you explain more about the reimbursement of funds?
That actually, I may need Val's assistance on that. So what I mean by that is the organization will be designated funds typically for programs or services. That is a common use of funds for discretionary. But when they do, when you are designated these funds for programs or services, that's usually worked out within the agency. Once the contract is received by the agency, I believe that you can open up a line of communication where you can basically submit a proposal on how you intend to spend this funds. And I believe they will reply back to you, approving or informing you what is eligible or not. Correct me if I'm wrong, Val, because I'll be really honest with you, on the back end, I'm not so much familiar on the reimbursement part. I just know that that's how it works. And all these things in the past were submitted via email, but now that we have the Passport system, everything would be submitted through there.
Correct. And just to elaborate on that, it's all
Mhm.
based on the approved line item budget that you negotiate with either our program managers here at DYCD or
Mhm.
any other city agency that your funds are being allocated through. So next question, are
Let
all
me
of these,
just
go
let me
ahead,
just add
Miguel,
to
sorry.
that, Val. And I think that that's an important point because a lot of nonprofits might get private foundation money,
Mhm.
and that money comes in first, and then you deliver the services. But when you work with the city in general, and
Mhm.
that includes any other, like for DYCD, you have to provide the services first. So you have to spend the money first, and then you have to demonstrate that you spent the money and then get reimbursed. So that is an important difference when you're getting city funding.
Correct.
Next question is, when are these awards decided?
The initial decision is made typically in June. That's when the city council has to approve the budget. The deadline to vote on the budget is June 30th. We've passed the budget in like the first, second week of June, but the past 2 years, we've voted literally on the final day on June 30th. So that's the deadline, and that's just the initial deadline. And what I mean by the initial deadline is we have to produce the city council's budget and figure out all the initiatives we intend to fund by June 30th, but we don't have to identify every recipient of those awards by June 30th. Typically, we identify groups that do the initiatives throughout the summertime and usually finalize designations around August, September. That's usually the goal, to allow the agencies to begin September, October to begin the contracting process.
Is there a list of the 140 initiatives without being 326 pages to comb through?
The quickest way I would suggest to do that would be to download on our council's website an expense tracker. You can just download the whole master list of all the organizations and initiatives and the purpose of funds. And once you get that into Excel, you can run some kind of pivot table to figure it out. But unfortunately, I don't have a list. Maybe we can provide one or make one for you guys, but I don't currently have a list now.
Actually, to clarify that, sorry, that was my question. And
Okay.
James, you probably know me. I'm Doreen. I'm a council staffer. I
Okay.
actually attended this because we're trying to make it easier for nonprofits to apply. And
Mhm.
it just seems like, I mean, I've only been working for a month, but
Yeah.
there's just so much going on and there's
There
a lot of
is.
missing pieces. And
Mhm.
I mean, I've stretched in as it is. And I imagine for the organizations here as well as myself, like we need to understand what are the 140 initiatives, who can qualify for what. Like there really needs to be something mapped out. So I'd love to connect at a different time or however best to
Yeah.
figure that out because that's urgent.
Got it. So just a little background on that. So part of why we just only release Schedule C and give that as the list is that our initiatives are 1 year at a time. So what we funded, you'll notice if you look at previous fiscal years, and we don't fund the same initiatives. Some of them are the same, but some, you know, with the change of times, we fund different things. So some of them, you know, may not be here next year to put all those things and have you gear up to apply for something that may not be available next year. So that's typically why, but we can create a summary of, you know, in my mind, Schedule C itself is broken down by program area. So that's, maybe we could just come up with a quick pivot table, but as far as eligibility requirements, that's a little more difficult because some of them are very broad and some of them are very specific as to what, and that's where we rely heavily on Schedule C to, I guess, explain that.
And maybe to be helpful, James, maybe we could use the funding source off the clear list. That might be helpful for council staff as well.
Big time. Yeah, that's I guess my goal would be to then, yeah, put it by the initiative and program area.
Can a council member fund projects that are not in their district?
Yes. Yes, council members do that all the time, but you do have to understand, council members were elected to try and bring as much funding and programming to their district as possible. That's the goal. So for them to fund something outside of their district, you have to kind of try and pitch to them that their constituents are receiving this programming in some way, shape, or form, or how their constituents benefit, because again, they all receive a very specific limited amount of funds for their district specifically. So if you intend to apply to a member to provide programming outside of their district, it's not, you know, off, you know, out of the question. It's common, but it's usually, there's reasoning behind it, whether a lot of the constituents, you know, go to whatever program, you know, in a bordering district, or maybe it's a borough related project you have going on, which, you know, everyone in the borough is a recipient of it. So yeah, there's no, as long as the council members on board, it's called discretionary funding because it's at their discretion. So it's up to them. But again, just the mindset, they are coached and taught and would like to keep as much funding in their district as possible.
I'm going to give you a couple more questions and just rest
Yep.
assure everyone that we took all the questions and we'll address them. But I
Okay.
see Carolyn has her hand up and I want to give her the opportunity to ask her
Yes.
question directly.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much. Much love and blessings. I'm a new organization in South Jamaica, Queens,
Okay.
and I deal with survivors. Now, it's very hard getting money to spend in order to be reimbursed. Have they ever came up, spoke about, you know, changing some of those laws? Because it's very hard for a new organization to be reimbursed. And this is where I'm stuck at now, because I've held events, but I already accounted that money to those who have given me money. So I don't want to do anything that looks fraudulent or anything like that. So I'm like stuck in that part of, you know, showing receipts for the reimbursement when I already had events. Do you have any recommendations on that?
Val, is there, do they still offer like that fund for the city of New York bridge loan scenario?
Yeah, but most often her situation is the putting out the money and claiming the receipts. That's a little different than the bridge loan piece. Carolyn, are you part of DYCD's portfolio or you're with another city agency?
Well, right now I've gotten money from United Way. I've gotten money from Safe in the City, you know, grant. And I just put in for the proposal for the last RFP that came out through the mayor's office.
I'll reach out to you separately outside of this presentation. So this way we can kind of figure out your situation and then we'll steer you in the right way.
Okay, thank you so much.
All
I'll
right.
put my number in, I'll put everything in the box.
Perfect.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna take Kenya. You got your hand up raised. You could ask your question, then I'll give you one more question after that, James, and then we can move on with the presentation.
Sounds
Thank
good. Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you guys so much for this. This is very needed in the community. My question is similar in the form of the previous lady's question, which is how can you guarantee, I mean, other than, how do you guarantee that for the funds that are like allocated, but you have to already purchase it? Some organizations don't have that problem, but they want to be sure that once they provide this service, those funds are they more guaranteed that, they know they're going to spend this money to do the service for the community, and that money will be able to come back to them. You understand?
Yes. So I get what you're saying. Like, how do you guarantee that if you got 5,000 from the city council, you spent it, that like nobody else is going to take it away from you? So that's number one. Well, first, before you spend it, as Val said, that you do have to check in with your program manager at DYCD before you spend any of that. That's if you are whatever agency, whether it be DYCD, SBS, regardless, before you spend any money, check in with them, because I have seen instances where groups, received their 5,000, are clear, did what they had to do, but spent the money in a way that was not technically eligible. They didn't check in with anyone before they spent it. So before you spend anything, that is a very big concern for small groups, especially because this could make or break you. If you spend a couple $1,000s the wrong way, sometimes there's no coming back. So I don't want to put anyone in that predicament. So what you do is, once you receive your funding, goals to be cleared. Once you get cleared, definitely touch base with the agency, inform them how you intend to spend the money. Once your organization is cleared by the council and by MOX and entered into Passport, MOX has put in a safeguard for you guys. And what I mean by that is they have put in a way where we, meaning the city council, even though that it's at our discretion, we can't reallocate those funds unless one of two things happen. Either you contact the council member or the agency saying that I can't use this, I don't want this, or the agency reaches out to us to tell us that. Otherwise, the council member can't change their mind anymore. Once it's cleared, so that is the safeguard that was put in place. Once it is cleared by both the council and MOX, then it is kind of locked in. The only one that could lose that money is you as the organization by failing to do whatever. If the agency is reporting to us that you're unresponsive, you're not replying to them, then yes, that's an opening for reallocation. But if it's not cleared, meaning if it's pending city council clearance or if it's pending MOX, I have to be honest with you, it is free game.
Okay.
Council members only get 1 year to spend and use this money. And if you're not being responsive, the agency doesn't know what you're doing, you're not cleared, they will reallocate those funds. So you could get the funding, but if you're not cleared, then it's still open. Your concern is real. It can be reallocated from you. So if you want to protect the funds, the goal is to make sure that you're cleared, like I said from the beginning, before you even receive the funds, that you're cleared by MOX and the council. Then your funds, can't be touched unless you yourself as an organization have an issue, whether it be unresponsive or you're declining the funds in whatever way, shape, or form.
So I want to repeat that all the questions have been taken. If we haven't got to your question, we'll be sure to answer them after the presentation. But I was going to give you one last one, James, but
Yes.
Evie's hand is up, so I'm going to give her the opportunity to answer her
you.
question, and then we'll move on.
So Val, actually, Brazilian Capoeira's had his
Yes.
hand
Oh,
up
there we go.
since
Yes.
Ilki.
Is he still on? He jumped off though.
Oh, he jumped off.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to give him the last one, but he jumped off.
Yes. Okay.
So Eve,
Evie, still
Evie.
there?
Evie, thank you.
Evie.
So you mentioned in passing that something about bridge loans from the fund of the city of New York. My question is, this is probably a problem for everybody that doesn't have the funds to cover it before the reimbursement. What does this bridge loan, is there a limit to how much you can get? If the city awards you 10,000, will they give you 10? If the city awards 100,000, will they give you 100? How does it work?
Val, you have more now.
So if you go through DYCD, there's two options, right? So if you're under $20,000, you're not eligible for the bridge loan because we can register your contract in-house. So we like to get you 100% of the money rather than a portion of the money. So we would prefer that you process your contract we get it done, and then we can register, you get 100% of the money. Now, if you exceed $20,000, there is a loan application that you can submit. It goes through the process here with the responsibility determination through our procurement team. That goes over to Mox for review, and they often give, I think it's a quarter of your align expense. So yeah, utility, staffing, things that are fixed costs throughout the year. So it would cover your utilities, your rent, your staffing. But I think it's like a 25%. I can get that information to you. But again, that only applies to providers above $20,000. Anyone 20,000 and below, we register the contract in-house. So we like to get you 100% of the money.
Just quick question on that, Val, for clarity. So they would just have to submit their proposals and whatnot if that's all.
So if they were applying for a loan, they would have to submit the loan application along with their expenses, what they plan. I think there's like a 6-page application that they have to complete. That goes through responsibility determination. There's also a couple documents that are required, like a budget, the line item budget, and it has to go through responsibility determination once we approve it. And again, this is all just for DYCD. So if you are funded through another agency, they have their process. But if you're funded through DYCD, you would have to submit the loan application, the line item budget, and then go through responsibility determination in order for us to get the application to Mox for approval.
Got it.
And again, those providers $20,000 and less, we push you more to processing your contract, so we can access 100% of the funds instead of a portion of the funds.
Yeah, so that's the part I meant. Do they have to spend the funds first, or they just have to submit their proposal for the under
They would submit their contract, and we would register it in-house, and then they would have access to their funds.
Got it. Cool. So there you go. That's the answer, Evie. All right, I'll let the next
Thank you, James.
Presenter take over. I'll hang on. I gotta step away for a second, but I'm gonna stay on here. So at the end, if there's further questions, if we want to have them, I'll be available.
Cool.
All right.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Val. We're
Thank
going to
you.
keep it moving. We do have 3 more presenters. So next is DYCD. So that's us. And give me 1 second. And please keep putting the questions in the chat. Because then we can figure out how we can best serve you and answer those questions. So you learned a little bit about how to get started with government contracting, with city funding. You learned a little bit about discretionary funding, and most city agencies also have contracting opportunities. So once you're established and you are interested in getting funding from us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about DYCD. My name is Miguel Bonilla. I'm the Senior Director for Capacity Building and Professional Development here at DYCD. My colleague Val Lopez, he's the Assistant Commissioner for Discretionary. So here at DYCD, so he can also answer questions. And then I have my colleague Anita Antonetti, who's going to talk about the Neighborhood Advisory Boards. So very quickly, I'm going to tell you a little bit about DYCD. A lot of you may be interested and may be already well informed about who we are. We lead the programs like the Summer Youth Employment Program, Beacon programs. What a lot of people may not know is that we also fund runaway and homeless youth shelters, youth workforce development programs, literacy programs. And then I'm in charge of capacity building. So we work with vendors to provide training and consulting to the nonprofits that we serve. We're very interested in equity, and we've been doing a lot to really figure out how do we encourage more MWBE consultants. We've had a couple of events where we're targeting MWBE consultants. We've been working on our equity statement and exploring internally how do we make our funds more equitable. along with other strategies that we're doing to pursue an equity agenda. So that's a snapshot on DYCD and the types of programs that we fund. And I think a lot of people have asked, about all these resources. We'll make sure that you get copies of the slides and more information on or where you can access more information about DYCD. Now, if you're looking for funding opportunities, really the best way is through Passport. Once you're set up, once you have an account on Passport, you will identify what kind of funding opportunities you're interested in, whether you're a private organization or a nonprofit. You can look at our website, and if you look at the yellow arrow, it shows you where you'll find upcoming requests for proposals. But again, if you want to get notified, you have to have an account, and that's probably the Passport system is probably the best place to get that kind of funding opportunity. But you could look at our website, and there will be some information there. And then also, in addition to that, you can also access information about our discretionary awards on this page as well. Is there anything you want to add about the discretionary, Val?
Just these are broken up. This would give you all the information and all the access to some of the documents that James and Ilke had mentioned in their presentations. So it would get you to the Schedule C where the list of awards is. It also gets you to the resolutions that are approved by council, and it also gets you to the award tracker so you can see the status of your awards. So this link has a lot of information that you can access if you visit us there at Discretionary Awards.
Great, thanks, Val. And this is just a snapshot of what is on that page. It has like deadlines, short descriptions on the funding opportunities. But again, Passport is probably the best place to get started. And what I also wanted to share with you is we have, so a lot of you here in the room are small or emerging nonprofits or people that are starting nonprofits. We actually have a website for emerging nonprofits. It's called CBD Resources, and it has access to places in the city that offer free legal assistance. I think somebody mentioned they're thinking about starting a nonprofit, so that you'll have contact information for organizations like the Lawyers Alliance for New York City, which provides pro bono legal assistance to nonprofits. They can also help you get incorporated, but also, if depending on where you are, you might need an attorney to help you with a lease or other issues. So this directory has access to all these organizational resources. There's places in the city where you can get low or inexpensive rental space. So we have that. And then we also have, in this CBD Resources website, we also have several vendors who provide activities for kids. So these are vendors that might do like science activities or arts activities. And so if you're interested in being part of this directory, we tend to emphasize MWBE certified vendors, but we also work with vendors that are not. But we do require that vendors be in the PIP system, which is what you need in order for nonprofits that are looking for vendors to easily work with. So you got to be in the pay information portal. And if you want more information on that or how to get listed in this directory, you can email me and I'll let you know how to do that. And then finally, I did want to share with you, my colleague's going to share with you about the Neighborhood Advisory Board. So Anita, you want to take it from here?
Good morning, everyone. Neighborhood Advisory Boards, but I'm going to go back a little bit and I'm going to talk about the Community Services Block Grant Program, which is a federal program and that funds anti-poverty programs and services. And it's been, this funding stream has been around for the last 58 years. One of the guidelines in this funding is that neighborhood residents in poverty areas should have a voice in what services are are going to be given in their community. And towards that end, DYCD, which is the Community Action Agency for the City of New York, established a neighborhood advisory board. And what this is, again, are residents of each neighborhood development area, which are communities that are have residents, that a population that it's 20% or more on the federal poverty level. So these residents help us to administer a community needs assessment every 3 years to see what's needed in their communities. They also allocate funds with the resulting priorities from that needs assessment to the programs that will serve their neighborhoods. And they read and evaluate proposals that come in for the CBOs like yourselves that will submit proposals, and they evaluate and they see which one wins the contract. During times when there isn't a community needs assessment, they attend meetings 4 times a year, and they attend trainings. And much of the trainings that also the CBOs attend, and they also welcome the CBOs to come to their meetings to say what they're doing, how their programs are doing, and what's going on in their community. So we're always looking for new members for these, the neighborhood advisory boards. They serve a 6-year term, and they can be participants of your programs. If you're getting funding from DYCD, you cannot, you and your staff cannot be part of the neighborhood advisory board, but your participants can be. The minimum age is 16, and we're encouraging young people to please participate. And the maximum age is whoever wants to come to the meetings, whatever, however old you are. And we welcome applications. I am going to, there's a link being put in the chat, and I'll have the application there. I'll also have our frequently asked questions about the CSBG program and the neighborhood advisory boards. We'll put it in the chat, and you can always have your participants contact us. It's also on our DYCD website.
I just dropped the link for the NAB and also for the community service block grants in the chat.
Oh, great. Thank you, Val. Thank you so much. So any questions, I'll be happy to answer at the end of the program today. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to table some additional questions to give an opportunity for our next 2 presenters to speak. So the next person is Roy Allen from Small Business Services. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Just give me 1 second. I'll get the presentation up and going. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Let me just full screen this. Okay, all right. So good morning, welcome everyone. My name is Roy Allen. I am representing the Department of Small Business Services today. And unfortunately, I do not have a camera, so you will not see my face, but I know you've come for the information as opposed to seeing my face this morning. So with all that being said, let's get started. So SBS has 3 certification programs. The one that most people are familiar with is the MWBE certification program, which is for for-profit businesses. And the for-profit businesses that are applying for the program need to have some real and substantial connection to the New York City market. 51% of the business has to be owned, operated, and controlled by a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. The designated minority groups include Black, Hispanic, Asian Pacific, Asian Indian, and Native American. And the last requirement we have for the MWBE program is you need to have sold products or services for at least 1 year. Now, our two other programs are the Locally Based Enterprise Program, LBE, and the Emerging Business Enterprise Program, EBE. Both are race and gender neutral. The LBE is more targeted towards businesses that are in the construction or construction related field. And one of the requirements that is probably the most substantial is you need to conduct business in an economically deprived area of the city, or employ an economically disadvantaged person or persons. Again, you must have sold products or services for at least 1 year, and the received gross receipts need to be averaging 2 million or less on an annual basis. The EBE program, also race and gender neutral. The difference with this program is we basically look for candidates who can prove some social or economic disadvantage. It's usually targeted to, well, not targeted, but we usually use examples of people who have been incarcerated, service disabled veterans, and people who can basically through forms of paperwork show us that they have been socially or economically disadvantaged. The net worth for each business owner must be less than $1 million. Again, the selling of products or services for at least 1 year. And like I said, race and gender neutral. So these are the 3 certification programs we have. Go to the next slide. So the process, this is where you would go to get certified, okay? SBS Connect, which is now actually the all-in-one, the one-stop shop for SBS services. So when you create an account on here, you'll be able to submit your certification, maintain any annual documents, and update information. In addition to that, during COVID, SBS rolled out a grant program, and firms were able to apply through SBS Connect. So for us, outside of the certification world, this is where you come to take advantage of SBS services, and where we keep a good tracking record of all your documents and profile information. Okay, the URL is, you can either go to nyc.gov/get certified, or you can go directly to the website sbsconnect.nyc.gov. Okay, next slide. Okay, so some additional services that SBS offers throughout the 5 boroughs are at our business solution centers. We have an array of services which are free to all business owners in the New York City area. And it's everything from pro bono work to financing assistance, recruitment for your business, training for employees, and business courses to help you get things started. Businesses can take advantage of these services by calling our hotline, which is the number you see on the screen, 888-727-4692, or they can go to the URL www.nyc.gov/NYC business. And these services are available at every business solution center in the 5 boroughs. So we have 1 in each borough. I think 1 borough might have 2. I think it's Manhattan. But depending on where you are in the city, you can go local to wherever the business solution center is. Okay. All right, PTAC, a really huge part of what it is to be a vendor here in New York City. So our procurement technical assistance team assists with a number of things. First and foremost, they help vendors find contracting opportunities at the city, state, and federal level. So, everything from market research to reviewing solicitations and responding to the RFPs, and even certification eligibility at the federal level, the 8A certification with the federal government. And for vendors who are not familiar with the procurement world, it's really a good opportunity for you to learn a lot, especially because they do cover state and federal contracting. So what you could do to take advantage of these services is you can visit the Eventbrite, that the Eventbrite URL you see on the screen, NYC Small Biz Courses.eventbrite.com. And there you'll find pretty much all of our Eventbrite courses, but for PTAC, they do workshops, I want to say at least like 3 times a week. So you'll find a different workshop every week that covers some sort of procurement related topic. And then at the bottom is their email address if you want to schedule some sort of one-on-one with them, or just have general questions about the procurement process. That email address is ptac@sbs.nyc.gov. Okay, so PTAC really important to the procurement side of things. They also, which I do want to mention before I go to the next slide, they assist with PIP and passport registration. They're familiar with both systems. And if you do have trouble and you can't get in contact with the people at FISA or the people at MOX, we provide assistance with figuring that out as well. Okay, so what we really came for was to find out how to find MWBEs in New York City. So what you see here is a picture of our online directory of New York City certified businesses. The 10,000 plus certified firms are all in our directory. There's a few ways to search. You can search by keyword, NIGP codes, NAICS codes, and then there's different filters that go with the code. So you can search for only Black-owned businesses, you can search for only Asian-owned businesses, you can search for only women-owned businesses, so on and so forth. So the system provides you with a lot of different options when it comes to looking for things. We recently updated it, so you're seeing a newer version of the online directory of certified businesses. And each day we look to make improvements to make it more user-friendly for everyone. So, like I said, the searching, you have the option to search using keywords, business name, DBA name, or description of business, if you know those things. But for people who don't, usually the safest option is, NIGP codes and code descriptions. So you see here on the right-hand side, we have the different code numbers and then what falls under those codes. So, you can add all of these, you can add one of them, and it brings up all the businesses that fall within that code. So the good thing is you're not wasting your time going through data to try and pinpoint. You have all of the businesses that fit under those codes right in front of you at the click of a button. So these are the searching options. If you're someone who's a little more tech savvy, there's definitely a lot of ways you can play around with it and do a more in-depth search. But for people who are, not as comfortable with playing with the different filters and looking deeper, this is a good way to find what you're looking for. Okay, so anything certification related, you can always reach out to us Monday to Friday. Our certification team's email is up there, as well as our hotline number. And then for any sort of referrals, if you know a business that is interested in becoming certified as an MWBE, you can reach out to our assistant commissioner, and she will assist you immediately. Okay, and that's it for me. I'll keep this up here so people can write down these numbers and take photos, do whatever they like. Miguel, open the floor for questions. I'm ready to answer any.
Sure. So maybe we'll take a couple questions. Evie raised her hand. Evie, you got a quick question?
Yeah. I'm from Witness to Mass Incarceration. I created a platform of formerly incarcerated led businesses and services. How do I get you to list us as well? Because if you look up, if you really want to lift us out of poverty, people have to know who we are, and we're invisible. So how do
Right.
we get on your list?
Right. Are you I'm sorry, Evie, are you a nonprofit business?
I'm a nonprofit that's creating an economic ecosystem. But after this presentation, I may have to open a for-profit.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how you would get on the online directory. You would have to be a
It's not
for-profit.
me. How do we get the listing of, in other words, women, Black-owned? How do I get list formerly incarcerated led businesses?
Right. So all you would have to do, and it's kind of hard to tell, right? Because the EBE certification, it's a general thing. So for people who are socially or economically disadvantaged, we don't have specifications for people who were formerly incarcerated or things like that. Those are just examples of people who apply. But if you feel comfortable, you can go into our online directory and then do the general search breakdown, and look for the firms that are EBE certified, and then break it down even further into, maybe where they're located and things like that. But since the program's race and gender neutral, you're not going to have the option to check minority status or whether they're a man or woman.
No, I'm basically saying, how do I offer you 200 formerly incarcerated businesses?
I'm so sorry.
In other words, I would like to see us listed as a minority group, and I would like to offer you the platform I built.
Okay. Maybe you can reach out to our Assistant Commissioner, Anna. She can figure out a way that we can connect to get some of these, because you're saying you want to, the people that you're working with, you want to get them into our program, correct?
Yes, under a specific listing though.
Yeah. Well, we can have you speak to our Assistant Commissioner to see what we can do to get those referrals in and see where they fit.
Feel free to reach out to me directly.
Yeah.
Can you put your information in the chat?
It's actually on the screen too, but yeah.
It's right there.
No problem. And then we'll take one last question. We're going to transition to New York City service. So Susie asked if the MWBE directory is available publicly, and it is. And we'll put the link again in the chat, and we'll share the slides. But that directory that Roy shared is something that anybody can access.
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't touch on that, but yes, it's open and free to the world, just like most, stuff government does is.
and sometimes city agencies like DYCD will hold events for nonprofits to meet MWBE vendors. We had one last year, and the two areas where the nonprofits were seeking assistance is in supplies and in and consulting. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay, definitely. Was there any other questions?
Any other questions, Val?
I have a quick question.
Okay.
I just was wondering, I love that you point that out. Are there any of them seeking services in mental health and therapeutical services, maybe techniques and things like that?
I think that's for you, Miguel. Was that for Miguel, Kenya?
Yes.
Okay.
It's certainly possible. A lot of after-school programs might have that need, right, to have that kind of expertise, and so what this directory does, it just tells you who is certified by the city, because city agencies will hire MWBE vendors themselves, or if they fund nonprofits, they may require those nonprofits to hire a percentage of vendors. So I highly recommend that if you're a private business and you think you provide services that might be useful for the nonprofit sector, that you get certified. And Roy is one of the fantastic trainers that'll take you. SPS offers trainings every month, and they'll take you through the process and guide you and make sure that you are well informed in how to get certified.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to get with Roy.
Sure. All right, folks, we're going to turn it over to.
I have one question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I just wanted to make sure to get certified under the MWBE, your business has to be in active for at least 1 year.
Right. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so that's the only way you can get certified.
Well, yeah, that's one of the minimum requirements. It's the 51% ownership by a minority or a woman, being in business for at least 1 year, and then your presence in New York City, basically 5 boroughs, 5 counties surrounding the 5 boroughs, and then 3 counties in New Jersey, which are Hudson County, Bergen County, and Passaic County. So if you fit all 3 of those, you are eligible to apply for certification.
Okay. Miguel, I just have one question in reference to but to put your business in Passport, it doesn't matter how long your business been active?
To put your business in Passport.
Yeah, like register your business in Passport.
Yeah, I don't think it matters, right, Val?
It does not matter.
Right. I think where it comes into play is, as I mentioned, every city agency has these requests for proposals. And so they may allocate a certain number of points for the amount of experience that you have serving a certain population. So, but I don't know if that's, I think that's a very specific question, but we can chat afterwards if you like. But I don't think in order to set up your account, it doesn't matter. It's when you start competing for funds that the funding will tell you what they're looking for, like years of experience or type of experience. And that might be one of the criteria that's used to evaluate your proposal.
Okay.
All right, folks, we're going to turn it over to Megan. You ready? So thank you, Roy.
Yep, no problem. Thank you, guys.
All right. Hello, everybody. Let me just share my screen. Oh. Sorry, it's going to take me 1 second. Miguel, is it possible for you to have the slides up? I don't think Zoom is letting me share my screen right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, 1 second, folks. Maybe we could take a few more questions. So I apologize that you're asking about the closed captioning. I do not have access to that. I do apologize. We'll have to work on that. Doreen has her hand up. If you want to ask your question while we're
so I saw the links about fund for the city of New York. I know that's how groups that either aren't big enough or et cetera, that's how they can get funding. Are they going to be presenting today, or is there a way, like a point person, like best way to figure that out? Let's have a lot of people in district who are in that situation.
Oh, say that again.
The fund for the city of New York, that's like, because they're the fiscal sponsor, right? So like if you're an organization but you don't have the right kind of status or something, like that's how people get funding, if I'm not mistaken. But it doesn't seem very clear like what their info is and how it really works.
Yeah, I wouldn't steer small groups that way, because Fund for the City of New York has a very strict, like, especially with council funding. They do program partnerships, but it's not just an open door of like, I'm a small group, I need you to be my sponsor.
Okay.
So that's misleading, and I've heard that outside before. That's the only reason why I hop back in to jump
Yeah.
in and say that. Like, they do offer program partnerships with smaller organizations that kind of tap into what you're saying, but it's not really as open and frequent as people think it is. You know, they're not just open to like any small group in your neighborhood. Like, yeah, we'll be your sponsor. So
Okay.
just to be clear with that, but they, meaning DYCD, will have more information on that
And
process and those partnerships. But I know at the council level, members have tried that, and like Fund for
yeah,
the City came to us to kind of make it clear that this is not an open door for small groups to just come and, you know, apply to be a fiscal sponsoree.
correct. And we yeah,
Yeah.
and correct. We did away with fiscal agents
Yeah.
several years back because it was causing a lot of problems for us. So under DYCD, we do not allow the fiscal agent to be processed through us.
Correct. Yeah. Wait, I'm sorry, Durin. We had a lot of issues with like situations like the fund. Um, and then we only allowed the fund, and then that became a problem because people, you know, were misled thinking like that was like the fund was the only person who was going to do this, but that wasn't the case. They had pre-existing program partnerships with smaller groups that we allowed to carry on.
Oh, I see. Okay, no,
Yeah.
that's good to know because like it does
Yeah.
seem like it's very difficult for new organizations or small orgs to really receive this funding, and they're the ones who really need it the most, and they need
Mhm.
bigger amounts. So we, in our office, I work for Councilmember Kristen Richardson Jordan. We're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap because as we see, you know, in the list that James included, and there's a lot of money to be spent and used, and it really needs to go not to
So
the big organizations that already get a lot of federal and other types of funding, but really small grassroots ones. And yeah.
So to be honest, Doreen, the best way that we can help them is we have to guide them to get their stuff together. And what I mean by get their stuff together, like they have to be legitimate, they have to be, you know, be able to handle it. Because at the same time, like Val said in the past, we've run into this issue. We've got so many small groups basically comfortable with receiving the small amount and not having to do nothing with. They never excelled, they never progressed, you know, to actually handle a contract on their own. And then what we have is a whole bunch of what we would dealing with was a lot of large organizations who were swimming in contracts for small groups, and that we had to do away with. So we understand the importance of these groups and we want to try and help them, but the best way that we can help them, because regardless of whichever way backdoor they try and get in, maybe they want to be a subcontractor, guess what? A paper trail has to be had, documents have to be submitted, and you know, the funds have to be accounted for, because at the end of the day, we have to remember this is city taxpayer funding.
Right.
So as much as we want to help these small groups, at the end of the day, a lot of information has to be accounted for because we are giving out city taxpayer dollars. So as much as we want to help them, unfortunately, that's the new way. That's how we have to steer them. We have to steer them in a direction of legitimizing themselves and their organization. And the ways to do that is like, all right, maybe they're not eligible this year for funding, but honestly, that may not be the best idea to give a new group funding right out the gate, because they have to learn how to handle passport registration, and they have to learn how to handle HHS accelerator. You know, once they do that, they open themselves up for these RFPs as well, you know, things like that. Once they execute, I just letting you know, this goes hand in hand. Once they execute and actually go through 1 year of an actual, you know, they provided a contract properly, a successful contract, they can use that to gain, you know, private funding, because private funders know what it goes through to like execute a city contract. So if you have showed that you can handle city contract, that just opens so many other doors for you. And like, this is one of those, once you're in, you're in, you know, especially with council members, once you have a track record that you have received funding and the funding has been executed properly, then you will be entitled to like, hey, this group can do it. That's another risk for members too. Like, they want to fund new groups, but you know how many members get money tied up with new groups because of concerns or issues with the contracting process. So we want to baby step them. Private funding is the best way to go for grassroots. So if you can, or if you learn of private funding sources, that's always the best for new groups to get themselves started. But in the end, any form of city contracting, whether it be discretionary, RFP directly through the agency, anything like that, they're gonna have to, you know, get it together on the administrative front, because that's usually where these groups lack. They never lack on the providing the program or service front. They're always great and excellent. And that's what hurts me or kills me to say I can't give them money and I have to, like, you know, decline or deny a community some type of programming. We would love to support that, but that's how we have to do it. That's the message we have to get to the members in these groups, is to just elevate them more on this level as opposed to taking the small, you know, dollar amount. Sorry.
Okay, no,
Sorry,
that's
Jim.
helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I will email you and Paul so we can figure
Yeah,
something
please.
offline. Because I know, I don't know if, I think it's for capital funding. I don't know if it's for discretionary. Like they need, like these organizations need to have 3 years of audits, but then
Yeah,
Bill de
yeah.
Blasio
Capital
passed
is
the
not,
law
yeah,
saying
that's
that,
not even possible, like, for capital for these small groups. But
right,
yeah,
or
we'll
like,
talk about that offline. If you want, we can schedule
Yeah.
a meeting, you and I, to discuss all these things. And you said you're
Yeah.
Councilmember Jordan, right?
yeah,
All right, we definitely need to work together. All right. So
All right,
we'll
great.
set up something, you and I, and if possible, we'll get the council member involved too.
all right, sounds good. I'll be in touch.
Thank you, Dane.
Thank you, guys.
Sorry, Megan.
All right, Megan, it's all yours.
All right, I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. Just to introduce myself, my name is Megan Solomon. I'm going to be rounding out our session today. I'm the Senior Capacity Building Coordinator at NYC Service. So my team does all sorts of nonprofit supports. Generally, who we are as NYC Service, we try to expand volunteerism and civic engagement across the city. So that's what a lot of these resources are going to be geared around. If you go into the next slide, I can talk a little bit more about NYC Service as a whole. So NYC Service is a division of the mayor's office. We started in 2009. So we haven't been around a super long time, but the whole inspiration around our existence is making New York City a city of service, and expanding that idea of service within our city. Next slide. So a little bit more about us, our values and beliefs. We believe in participation among residents. We believe in diversity and inclusion. We believe in community, and we believe in collaboration. So all four of these values are things that we try to integrate into our programs. We try to make every single one of our programs as accessible as possible. And we try to integrate resident and community input when it comes to any of the programs that we create. So a little bit more about these programs. I'm going to give like a pretty quick overview about each. The best way for you to get more information about these, because I don't really have a ton of time to go super in depth, is to visit our website, nyc.gov/service. I can also put it in the chat, or you can email me. I'll put my email in the chat. But I'm just going to give a quick overview on some of the things that we offer. So next slide. First, in the realm of volunteer capacity building, next slide. We have a AmeriCorps program called New York City Civic Corps. This is our oldest AmeriCorps program. We started it in 2009 when our agency was founded. And this is our AmeriCorps program that places folks for a 10-month term of service with local nonprofits. You do have to be a 501c3 to qualify for this program. So I just wanted to say that from the top. For local nonprofits to increase their volunteer programming. So one of the ideal qualities we look for in a host site partner for Civic Corps is an organization who either is trying to revamp their volunteer programming or maybe doesn't even have a volunteer program and is looking to start one. We recruit folks for you, we onboard them, and in many cases, it does kind of depend on your organization's budget, but you can look at stipend breakdowns on our website. We have a reimbursement process for the pay that folks get for that 10 months. So you do pay a host site fee, but the majority of their stipend for that 10 months is reimbursed from us. So This program is running recruitment right now. So if you're interested in having somebody come in and work on your volunteer programming, we're still looking for host sites until April 22nd. So I can put a link to that in the chat, but next slide. So we also have a number of coaching and training opportunities. To talk about a few of those. The first one is the Great Volunteer Management System. NYC Service created this training series and manual in collaboration with New York Cares. It's kind of a entire, it's a very like thorough overview of volunteer management, from recruitment, onboarding, management, event planning, offboarding, and all of those things. We do hold training series on the Great Volunteer Management System. We haven't had one this year, but we do have the entire paper copy of the manual available on our website for anybody to review on their own time. Next slide. We also host trainings on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility for nonprofits for their volunteer programming and also for their nonprofit boards. So we have already hosted our training on DEIA and not in volunteer programs this year. It was a few months ago, but in June we'll be holding our training for DEIA for NYC nonprofit boards. So one of the cool things about these trainings is not only do we do the volunteer programs training is one session, the nonprofit board training is 3 sessions. So not only do we do these trainings to kind of establish a baseline or a foundation on diversity, equity, and inclusion for your organization's different needs, but we also, for the nonprofit board side, offer additional consulting sessions. And those are one-on-one with our trainer. And your organization can work with her to create a nonprofit strategy or a board posture on DEIA to actually implement based on what your actual individual needs are. So that's going to come up in June. And if you're interested, all of the information is going to be posted on our website. So moving forward, another document that we put together that you can view on our website are our resource toolkits. So we have one geared toward corporations or business partners of nonprofits, businesses that want to be more involved in their community. We also have one geared toward nonprofits looking to expand their partnership engagement or their volunteer engagement. So we had trainings on these toolkits as well, just trying to explain them out more or have folks be a little bit more participatory in those. So all of the trainings that we held on the toolkits are available on our website. We did full recordings of them. The slide decks are available and the toolkits themselves are available for free. So the volunteer capacity building and partnership engagement one is around 70 pages long. It's full of helpful information. There are worksheets that you can use to do things like build out what your unique value statement is in your community, or to create a pitch to a partner. Just whatever helpful things we could think of to put in this. And we published this in January, so it's a pretty new document, and we're also always super open to feedback. We don't want these to be just like solid or unchanging documents, and we want to create continuous engagement with them. So right now we're actually doing individual consultations on the toolkits as well. It's too late for folks to apply for that now, but we are looking to have more engagement with the content in the future and create more individualized support for nonprofits. So just keep an eye out for that, but we don't have a schedule for that quite yet. Okay, so for youth engagement, if you go to the next slide, our youth engagement is largely centered around youth leadership councils or YLCs. So we have a network of YLCs that we oversee at NYC Service, basically just engaging youth with issues in their community that they would like to address. And we also do training for the youth. We do a lot of the kind of back end program work for them. And then we partner with organizations who want to host the youth leadership councils and kind of give them more on the ground resources or be a little bit more active with them that way. We also do YLCs with city agencies. So, just trying to get youth started on a path of civic engagement from a young age. So introducing them to issues in their community that they can have an impact on, and then leading them through that for 10 months, and then hopefully continuing to engage them in our other programs. The next slide. So we have a few different funding resources that we offer. The first one, New York City Civic Impact Funding, is not currently available. We actually closed applications for that. It's April, so a couple months ago now. We closed applications in February. But Civic Impact Funding is a funding opportunity that we offer where in the years that we've done it so far, we've done it for 3 years. We distribute up to $10,000 to 20 local organizations. They actually don't need to be 501c3s for this one. We wanted to open it up to other community-based organizations, but we did administer the funding on Passport this year. So all of that helpful information you heard about Passport at the beginning of this meeting are going to be helpful for this opportunity we offer as well. So CIF is something that we offer only once a year or once a fiscal year. So typically we open the applications in the winter and have them open for a couple of months. So you can keep an eye out for that. This year, we were specifically focused on organizations that utilize volunteers for their food distribution programming, but it's possible that we change that focus based on shifting community needs, but that's what it's been so far. Next slide. One of the other funding opportunities that we have are Love Your Block grants, which I wanted to highlight in particular today because applications actually go live today. And the Love Your Block grants are mini grants that we give to neighborhood groups, resident-led groups to revitalize their neighborhood or revitalize a city block. We also typically hold events and offer other resources to organizations that we partner with in this way, but highly encourage folks to read more about that, especially if they're a small resident-led group or know one in their neighborhood who's interested in working on something in their neighborhood. Next, the last thing I'll talk about, because I know that we have only a little bit of time, is our recognition program, which is also happening now. Unfortunately, our window has closed for accepting nominations, but you are still able to attend our event, which is on April 28th. And at this event, you'd be able to see tons of not just local community-based organizations or nonprofits, but city agencies and corporate partners who have made an impact across the city. So what the Mayoral Service Recognition Program is in a nutshell is basically folks can send in nominations on 4 different categories. So a Partnership Impact Award, a Community Impact Award, an AmeriCorps Alum Impact Award, and a Youth Impact Award. And they submit hundreds of applications. I think just the Community Impact Award this year got well over 100 applications. So we get nominations, and then we get teams together to choose folks to recognize during the ceremony. And everybody gets certificates and things like that. But it's a really good way to learn about some of the really interesting and impactful work happening around the city. So yeah, next slide. Like I said at the like I said at the beginning of my short presentation, any more information that you're interested in, the best way to do that is to go to nyc.gov/service. We have a tab on nonprofit resources that has all of the things that I just talked about. Or if you're interested in New York City Civic Corps, we have a tab on AmeriCorps programs that will have a lot of information for you and a link to the application if you're interested in applying. Or you can email us at nycservice@cityhall.nyc.gov, and I'll also put my personal email in the chat. So I know we have a few minutes left. I'll pass it back to Miguel.
Thanks, Reagan. It looks like we have somebody raised their hand. You want to ask your question? Go ahead.
Julia has her hand raised.
Yeah,
Julia.
sorry.
Hi, Julia.
It was about, I wrote it down and I kind of forgot, but it was about the youth engagement, the YLCs. I know she mentioned it was focused on working with high school youth. Would it be acceptable from a, because my program is a GED program, so it's high school aged youth from like 17 and a half to 24. So I was just curious if that would be acceptable for the YLCs.
I think it depends. I would actually have to look into that more, because it's funny you ask about YLCs. That's the one program that I don't really oversee.
Okay.
So if you email me your question, I can get you a much more definitive answer.
That's
I think
fine.
that high school age should be okay, but I will have to double check. Sorry.
It's okay. Could you put your email in the chat, please?
I did, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
And I think Lily has her hand raised for another question.
Hi, good afternoon. Yes, it's the afternoon. Thank you everyone for taking the time to educate us. I have a question. I am a co-founder for a nonprofit 501c3. It's an international salsa museum. And we hope to find an actual building in the Bronx, but right now we're doing everything remote. Regarding volunteers, can we still apply and see if we can get volunteers to help us remotely, or do we have to have a physical location?
Yeah, so regarding the volunteer programming that I talked about, we are totally open to remote volunteers as well. On our website, actually, I neglected to mention this in the presentation, you can post volunteer opportunities, and you can indicate there whether it's a remote opportunity, an in-person opportunity, or even a hybrid opportunity, where maybe they do like an orientation online, but they actually do their service in person or something like that. But for example, our NYC Civic Corps members, many of them are serving fully remotely, partially remotely, or in person, just depending on the needs of their host site. For example, one of our host sites is a museum, and so the member there has to be in person. Another one of them is an office or an organization whose office transitioned to fully remote during the course of the year. So open to lots of different kinds of opportunities. And I know that remote volunteerism has been really popular over the course of the pandemic, just because of accessibility and ability for people to engage from wherever they are. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That's great information.
I think we had another question from Susie. Can you tell us if the Love Your Block grants are only open to nonprofits with certain levels of annual funding?
I don't think there's a funding requirement. I'll check for this year. If you email me, I can answer it a little bit more definitively, because I'd want to double check the application since it went live today. But I don't think we have a funding requirement like that.
All right, like what we said, we'll funnel the questions and we'll get all this information out to everyone. I just want to make one pitch, which I dropped in the chat. our SYP has kicked off, and I want to be sure that you have access to the information. So I dropped the link in there to access all information on SYP. And Miguel has some additional information that he wants to share with you.
Sure. So if I put the link to an evaluation, and so if you want more information from the speakers, if there's things that you think would be helpful next time, take a couple of minutes and just answer the questions in the survey link in the chat. And we'd really appreciate that. Well, thank you everybody for your time. We hope it was informative. We're going to share the slides and additional information with everybody. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. So thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Good afternoon. Can you please put the link for the survey in the chat again?
Sure. Okay.
Oh,
One
I have a
second.
quick question as well, please. Miguel, is it possible for you to share like the website we could sign up for to become a DYC vendor? Is that available?
So, I'll put my email address in the
Sure.
chat.
Okay.
And we have an event coming up, so that might be good information for you too. So
Yes,
I'll put,
please.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Miguel, Miguel, just out of curiosity, the Mayoral Service Award, April 28th, is that going to be done virtually?
You know, is that something you guys do, Megan? I think Megan might have dropped off. Why don't you type it in the chat, the question, because that's definitely not something that I'm doing, but I can ask my colleagues if when that's happening, and then we'll put together like an FAQ and share it with everybody. So go ahead and put it in the chat.
This was all recorded, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So how is it? Because my a member of our team wasn't able to connect somehow he wasn't able to. So how do we get a recording so he can see this as well?
Sure. So what we'll probably do is put a link on YouTube. We have a lot of videos on YouTube, and you're welcome to check us out.
Okay.
So when I send information, it'll probably be a link to that.
Thanks.
All right, folks. Thank you for joining us.